Welcome, everyone. My name is Julia, and I am a career coach and strategist with over 10 years of experience helping ambitious professionals like you find clarity in who you are, along with helping you align your values and preferences to your career. This podcast is one of the main ways that I share my knowledge, strategies, and experience with you. And if you check out the podcast page on my website, I have all of the podcast seasons organized and easily accessible to find what you need. Along with the podcast, I have multiple courses, resources, and I offer one-on-one customized career coaching that covers career exploration, career management, and career advancement. So head on over to ridethetidecollective.com to check it all out. All right, we are in season 8. This is our second episode. We are talking about the control your career process. So this is a process that I have created. It's also a signature program that I offer. But this season, I am giving you an inside scoop with it. I want you to get started on controlling your career. And this particular episode is kicking off the different phases that we have for this process. So this one is covering the first phase, which I call rate your reality in the program, but I also have referred to it as realistic reality. And this phase is all about evaluation. I want to make sure that you have a clear picture of what is happening in your world, in your sphere. I want you to understand the nuances of your situation and make sure that you are approaching everything with a very clear head. In many, many cases, we make up scenarios. We think things are better or worse than they actually are because we aren't willing to take a hard look at what is actually happening. And so this phase is really about being honest with yourself and your situation. And here's one of the hard truths. Sometimes we're the problem. Sometimes it is us. Sometimes we try to blame other people. We try to blame society. I talked about that in the very first episode. And there are times where that is warranted. But we also have to understand what is realistically happening in our situation, what we are capable of controlling ourselves, and then be able to put together resources and a plan that's going to help us move forward well and reach the goals that we want to reach. Sometimes the situation that we're in is worse than we perceive. We're trying to make the best of it. I see that so much with so many professionals where they are in a toxic or abusive work situation and it's impacting other areas of their life. And sometimes we just need to have a conversation about that and be honest about what is actually happening instead of, wiping everything under the rug and acting like it's not impacting us, right? And then sometimes life happens. If you've been around for a while, you've heard my story. I'm not going to go into it on this episode, but I lost my parents and that had an impact on me. I had a kid that had an impact on me and my career. We can't always control the world. We can't always control the people around us, and we really shouldn't try to. But we can control how we react and how we experience situations and then how we move forward from that. All right. So let's get into some of that right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be sharing some of the different sections that I have for phase 1, what I go through with clients. And I'm going to be sharing some of the topics and the questions that I go through. So phase 1 is really heavily about asking questions. And so what I did is I curated some questions from the multiple lists of questions that I have for my clients. And I'm going to share some of those with you that I think are some of the more impactful and hard-hitting questions that really everybody should be asking about their career and their life. All right. So let's go ahead and get into that. So one of the first sections I have is your career reality and your life reality. And what this is an extensive list of questions Some talking about your career, some talking about your life, and we're really digging into what is actually happening. And what this does is it allows you to really look at situations that maybe you're ignoring. It also allows me as a coach to dig into what some of your answers may or may not be. One of my superpowers is being able to pull out information that you maybe don't really want to talk about, but that is impacting what is going on. So let's start with some career questions first. The first question is, what do you love most about your job? Seems like a simple question, right? But what I want to make sure that you think about is not just what you're good at. It's not about what you're good at. It's about what you love most. What are the aspects that you really love about the work that you do? And it might be a combination of what you're doing now and what you've done in the past. So think about that. Go back into your work history and think about what are the things that you have really enjoyed the most and jot those down. What is your proudest career accomplishment? One thing I feel like we don't do enough is pat ourselves on the back and celebrate things that we have done, even if it seems simple or it seems easy. We accomplish a lot throughout our careers, and we need to celebrate that. And so one thing that I like to do with clients, and I hope that you'll do through this activity, is really look at what are different things that you've accomplished throughout your career that you're really proud of. It could be a project that you completed. It could be a relationship that you won over at your company, right? It could be a relationship with a manager that went really well. It could be a client that you landed. Maybe you hit some goals like sales goals or whatever it looks like. It could, I know for me, a lot of my proud accomplishments are with individual people and the impact that I've seen with them and how their life has gone and their career has gone, and some of the things that I've helped set in motion because of that. Those are some of my most proud career accomplishments. And so what does that look like for you? And that can be anything. Don't limit yourself there. What frustrates you about your job? We don't talk about this enough either. What frustrates you about your job? And again, going back into previous positions, when have you been most frustrated? What frustrates you now? This is a question we have to ask because we need to be honest and we need to be clear about what are these things that are really getting in our way. And I'll give you a hint on this one. When you list out those things that frustrate you, I want you to start to unpack why those things frustrate you. And is it you or is it somebody else? And you need to be really truthful about that, because there are things that have bothered me in my career that are my issues. There are things that bother me because I wasn't clear, because I was not communicating, and it ended up bugging me. There are other situations where, somebody's not pulling their weight and all of that, and sometimes that's on the other person. So think about things that frustrate you and then take it a level deeper and figure out if it's you, if it's them. Again, what is the reality of that situation? All right, we're going to start getting into a little bit of the life things. And part of the reason we talk about life is because life impacts career. And we need to understand and get a clear picture of what your home life is like and what is going on in your personal world that could potentially impact what's happening in your career world. I know that there are people out there that want to keep those things separate. It's very hard to do that. It's very hard to do that. And I would say most people don't. And so I like to talk about the life side because, again, as a coach, I need to have a full picture of what's going on. And this type of program and this type of process really requires a dive into who are you as a whole person, not just the work side of you. So this question is about hobbies. What are your favorite hobbies or activities to do outside of work? And part of the reason that I talk about this is because I want to know what your interests are. I want to know the things that motivate you, that you're choosing to do. We don't always choose the career situation that we're in, but we can choose the hobbies and activities that we are involved with outside of work. And so I want to know what that looks like for you. And if you want to go a layer deeper, why do you do them? What's the motivation? Do you have time for them? Right? So again, we have that surface question, and then dig a little bit deeper with it if you'd like to. One thing that I do want to note with hobbies, there's no restriction here. So there's no like, this is what defines a hobby. It can be video games if you're into that. It can be reading. It can be TV and movies. It can be all of these things that I think sometimes people deem not being hobbies. I'm perfectly fine with those being your hobbies. They're some of my hobbies as well. Another layer with those particular things, if that's something that you do, I know I watch a lot of movies. I love movies. A lot of people are super into video games. I do a lot of reading. I want you to talk about the difference between moderation and disassociation. So how much are you doing any of those things, and are you doing them in a capacity that makes sense, or are they a potential disassociation for you? And the reason that I'm bringing this up is because this was a disassociation thing for me back when I had chronic stress and really had no idea what was going on, and how deep the impact was of the work that I was doing in the situation that I was in. And I would disassociate. I didn't understand at the time that that's what it was. And so making sure that you have a clear picture of, is this a healthy use of this activity, or am I using it to disassociate because I don't want to deal with what's happening right in front of me? I told you we were digging in. I told you we are getting to the heart of things here. All right. And one of the questions that I ask all the time and I talk about all the time, have there been any major life events recently? That can mean a lot of different things to different people. The way that I tend to describe a major life event, anytime your situation changes. So that could be you get married, you get divorced, you start a new relationship, you get out of a relationship, you have kids, or you're trying to have kids. I have quite a few friends who have had fertility issues, and that can be a multi-year process that impacts people, right? So what are those major life events? Death. Again, death of my parents was a huge thing for me. Maybe you're adopting, or you're going through the adoption process. So one thing to remember is it's not always like a singular event. It's usually a season of time. Sometimes that season is a couple of months. Sometimes it's a couple of years. So being really honest with yourself about major life events. Maybe you move, start a new job, end a job, you get laid off. Your living situation changes in some way. Like there are a lot of things that can contribute to a life event. And so I want to know from you, what are those life events that could potentially be impacting you, and are you still in it, or are you, on the way out of it? Are you in the middle of it? Are you on the cusp of something? Being aware of that and understanding how it could impact your mental, emotional status, that is extremely helpful, because sometimes we need to give ourselves grace in these situations and in these seasons of our life. All right, we're going to talk about this, and some of you are not going to want to talk about it, and you need to. And this is one of those questions that people want to avoid. They don't want to talk about because it can be really difficult to dig into the details of it and the truth of the matter. What is the reality of your financial situation? And if you've coached with me before, we talk about finances. I want to know where your head is at around your finances, what your history is, where you've been in the past. I want to know all of that, because how you handle finances will absolutely impact your career. it impacts the types of positions that you go for, the salary that you're seeking, all of that. And so there's a lot of nuance to finances. So it really just depends on your situation. But that is absolutely something that we talk about. So I want to know, what's the reality? What is the reality? And this is one of those situations where sometimes it's hard. I used to be, I still am in a lot of ways. I'm an emotional spender. When things get hard, I want to go to Target and spend some money. Um, I'm much better now because I've dealt with a lot of my stress, and I've managed a lot of it. And so I don't find myself doing that much anymore. But when I get the impulse, immediately I'm like, what's going on? What's going on in my life right now that's making me feel like I need to go walk around Target mindlessly. So really think about that. What is the reality of your financial situation, and what are some changes that you could potentially make to make that situation better? And I could do a whole episode just on finances, but if that's something that you want to talk about, let me know and we can do a special session particularly around finances. The next section in phase 1 is about your internal thoughts. And I'm fully aware that not everybody has an internal monologue. I happen to be somebody that has an internal monologue. There is a lot happening up here all the time. But even if you're somebody who doesn't have an internal monologue, most people have a voice that speaks to them in some way. And sometimes that voice is really positive and it encourages them, and sometimes it's really negative. And so I really like to dig into, do you have that internal voice? And what is it saying? Is it positive? Is it negative? What is the status of that voice? Because if it is primarily negative, then we need to deal with what the root of that voice is. Who is telling you those things? Is it you, or is it somebody in your life that has planted that seed for you, right? So one of the activities that I do with clients is naming your internal voice. And this is a common activity. I do not know who came up with it, but it is one that I've seen used multiple times. But naming your internal voice, and it can be something silly. It doesn't have to be anything serious. But what it does is it helps you separate. It helps you separate the voice from yourself. And it essentially gives it its own personality, and it helps you really go, oh, this is so-and-so speaking up again. Is this truth? Is it not true? And how am I going to take this information? And so when you can start to do that, I think it really helps control those internal thoughts, which then helps you see things very clearly versus letting things spiral out potentially. Oh, one of my favorite topics is mindset. I will tell you, this is something that I wish I understood better at a younger age. I think, so for those who aren't familiar with mindset, we're talking about a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. So a fixed mindset uses excuses and blame to justify lack of career advancement. Obviously, we're connecting things to career. And then growth takes ownership of career progression and learns what is needed to advance, and in this case, control your career, control what's going on. I spent so long in a fixed mindset for a lot of reasons. I would say the main one is just doubting myself. My anxiety and doubting myself kept me in a fixed mindset for a really, really, really long time. The irony is, I think that people on the outside saw a growth mindset. And let me tell you, that is a really interesting thing to manage when externally you're giving off growth mindset and it looks like you're working toward goals and you're embracing challenges and all of that. And then internally you are freaking out and you are in a fixed mindset. It is the craziest thing to go through. But my clients, clients who come to me, they are usually in a growth mindset. And if they're not fully embracing it, they're at the start of it. They know that something is not working, and they want to be on that growth journey. And so that's why they're coming to me. That doesn't mean that you don't have moments of fixed mindset. So, really quick to go over the differences. A fixed mindset avoids challenges, they give up easily, they ignore feedback. That's a huge one in the career space. You know, when you're getting feedback, especially from a manager, and you completely ignore it. So when we're talking about realistic reality, you can't ignore the feedback. You have to listen to the feedback and take it in and figure out if it's true. If it's not, is it that person's perception? What are you giving off? All of that, right? And then you're threatened by others' success. So when you see people who are constantly trying to tear other people down, or they're questioning people, again, I was like, internally, I was like this for way too long, because I didn't know what it was. Come to find out later, I'm a very anxious person. That was a lot of it. But then you embrace that growth side. And so the growth side is embracing challenges, persisting toward goals. So you don't blame other people for your lack of movement in your goals. You own what you have done or haven't done in persistence toward your goals. You learn from feedback. So even if it's feedback you don't want to hear, you hear it, you take it in, you figure out what to take from it, and then you move forward. And then you celebrate success. It doesn't matter who it is, the success that they've had, whether it competes with you or not, you celebrate it and you learn from it. What did they do well, right? What can you learn from them and take with you on your own journey? And the final section that we talk about in phase 1 is relationships. Now, this section is really detailed with lots of activities. I'm not going to go into all of that because it's too much to talk about on a podcast or via YouTube if you're watching this on YouTube. But basically, you want to evaluate the relationships that you have in your career and in your life. Okay, so I'm going to get you started. I'm going to give you a couple things to think about when it comes to relationships, but ultimately you want to do a relationship audit with career and with life. So first question, who do you have the best relationship with? So again, career and life. Who do you have the best relationship with? And I would think about who champions you, who's supportive of you regardless of what is going on, who is really advocating for you in your career and in your life. So career is people you are working directly with, and then life would be family, friends, acquaintances, things like that. And where is there tension? So who in your career or life are you feeling tension with right now? Warranted or not, whether it's your fault or their fault, or maybe you don't know yet, where is there tension? Where do you feel it? A lot of times this comes with management. A lot of people feel tension with their manager. And if that's the case, again, we want to unpack another layer. If you have tension with your manager, why do you have tension with your manager? Is it you? Is it your behavior? Is it how you've shown up in that relationship? Is it them? Are they not showing up well? Are they making assumptions about you? Do they have enough information about you to have a clear picture? Are they maybe just not a nice person? That's a thing. You know, what is it? Dig to the next level. What is it? Is it you? Is it them? Is it the situation? And then the last question here, are there any relationships that seem like a lost cause? Again, on the career side and on the life side. This question tends to impact life a little bit more, but I want you to think about it in both scenarios, because if somebody is going through something and they're not connecting with you, they're not trying to salvage the relationship, you need to be clear about that and you need to let it go. So even on the work side, if you have somebody in your organization that you are not jiving with, that maybe you don't even have to work with, they just are a thorn in your side, recognize that and let it go. If it's somebody you have to work with, that's a different situation. You're going to have to figure out a way around that. But for people that you do not have to interact with, set those boundaries and distance yourself as much as possible and let it go. That's the key thing here. Relationships that are potentially a lost cause, you cannot internalize that. So part of this realistic reality and rating your reality is going, this is the reality of the situation and I cannot control it. So I'm going to let it go. I'm going to release it and I'm not going to think about it anymore. I'm not going to do anything about it because there's nothing I can do. Okay. As a career coach, one of my favorite questions to ask clients is this: if money, time, and skills were not a barrier, what would you do? What career would you have? What would your life look like? And how would you spend your time? This question is a combination of digging into a deeper part of you, as well as a little bit of visioning, right? And some people have done that work and some people haven't. I don't accept generic answers when it comes to this question. So if somebody gives me an answer that is a really obvious direct connection to the career that they have now, I actually don't accept that. I want to dig deeper. So if they do say, oh, like, let's say you're an accountant and you're like, I want to be an accountant and I want to do this and I want to go here, that's fine. I want to know why. I want to know what motivates you to be an accountant. And here's the thing, it's okay if you say money. It's okay if you say, well, this, I'm really good at it and I enjoy it for the most part and I want that to be my career. I want that to be where I head. That's fine. The purpose of this question is to either uncover desires that you have for your life and career that you aren't living right now, or it's to solidify the path that you're already on. And for you to understand why you're on that path. And then for me as a coach to also understand why you're on that path, because I need to know, and you need to know, what motivates you? What motivates you to be in this career? What motivates you to go down this path? So if you have a career path and then you answer this question and it is not the same, that's also a point for us to dig deeper and go, okay, what is that? Where is that coming from? And is it a reality for you? And are we going to go deeper and are we going to try to figure out how to get you there? Or is it a dream that is a dream that you don't particularly want to realize, but you think is cool, right? So I love that question. Again, if money, time, and skills were not a barrier, what would you do? What career would you have? What would your life look like? And how would you spend your time? Okay, action for this episode. I told you in episode 1 that we were going to be doing actions. Obviously, this whole episode was about action. So if you maybe were listening to this in the car and didn't have a piece of paper, or you want to jot some notes down as you were thinking about it as I was asking the questions, that's what I want you to do. I want you to go back through. I want you to answer these questions for yourself. Even without a coach to debrief the answers, you will still find clarity. You will still be able to get somewhere if you can be honest with yourself. And I think if you come to this episode and to these questions with a posture of honesty and being ready to go, I'm going to be honest with myself and I'm going to tell the truth, and I'm going to write down, or I'm going to, think about that nagging thought in the back of my head around this particular question. That's what I want you to do. I want you to truly, truly dig into it. All right. So thank you for hanging with me on this episode. Next, we are going to be going into the personality side. So I'm going to be talking about different personality assessments and other assessments that I use with clients. And I will be sharing some of those activities with you that we will go through, as well as some freebies that I have around some of those activities too. So thank you for joining me, and I will see you next time.